What's up, guys? All right, the four agreements. Looks like the last time I recorded on this was October 2nd of 2023. So let's finish up this dang book. I honestly lost interest. I'll put it this way: I kind of hit some points a little bit before I stopped reading that were kind of maybe difficult to work on. They were kind of difficult to work on, and I wasn't like too sure how to like keep working on them. So I kind of went the next few pages for the next few days, but like, I wasn't like really into the stuff I read right before that, I guess. Um, I don't really remember um, uh, what it was. I guess the last one I did is called Changing Fears. Um, but whatever it was that was a little bit before that, I remember when I was reading it because I was sitting in the car reading it, and I was like, this is a little complicated for right now. Like for that time when I was reading it, I don't know if it was that week or that day or just like a time period thing. I can't remember because it was a long time ago now. But I remember being like, okay, that kind of hit a little hard to a point where I was like, mm, I don't know if I can like actively be working on this. And so I did keep reading, but I think um, I wasn't reading um like I don't know, I wasn't like into it, I guess, at a certain point, and then I just kind of put it down. Um but yeah, I was like, I don't want to sit on this book too much longer. Um so the last pages we looked at were 105 through 107, talking about changing fears. Um, and then from that point on, now that it's like mid-December, um, the next part, so pages 108, 109, 110, talk about um, getting to the core of agreements until you can break the agreements, basically. Um, and it does take a process of strength to be able to break those agreements. So they go back to this example of the girl who's told not to sing. It says at the bottom of page 108, now she's 20 years older and she still doesn't sing. And she can basically pretend and try to sing, even if she's not going to be good at it potentially, and keep trying and doing it. That's an example of breaking an agreement, um, because she got scolded when she was younger for singing, and someone told her that she didn't have a good voice. I mean, some things are kind of weird like that, right? Like when you think about singing, it's like you don't have to sing well to do it. Like there's certain things that like, yeah, maybe you're not going to become like a professional rock star, or you're not going to become like a pop icon, or you're not, certain people don't really have the specific talents to become like a pro in the area. But it's just like with sports, just like with anything. Like you can have hobbies that you suck at. I'm not a great singer, but I like singing, and so I'll do it. I'll go to karaoke and I'll sing, in public. It might take a couple drinks to get there, but I mean, I'll do it. I don't really, it doesn't stop me that I don't sound great. Now, I don't sound like so bad that it's like, whoa, you really shouldn't be singing. But I've really messed up musically, like even with guitar, like have messed up before. And that's not a good feeling. I still remember, you know, um, times where I've like sang and it didn't go good, or times when I've, like messed up at a church service and like, you know, just we just kind of like bombed the last song kind of thing. Like I've been in experiences like that where it's like, you know, I don't know, like it's not the best look, but it's like, well, the thing I could say to other people is like, well, I don't see you up here doing it. It's not possible to never make mistakes. And I think that's a lot of people's biggest fear is like if you're in front of a crowd and you just kind of like bomb, you know. I've been in I don't I've you know, you know, being in the field of psychology and going to school, grad school and all that, I can't tell you how many countless presentations I've given about, research projects, how many countless, presentations I've given about client cases. You know, sometimes you're just not on your A game. Sometimes people ask you questions and you're like, I can't really remember what was in the chart, and your mind's just not really like quite there, and you just kind of can't remember too good. And you know, it's kind of hard to sustain that that specific thing. Um, and so there's that. Um, and when it comes to breaking agreements, it doesn't have to be like breaking the most difficult things. Like some are going to be easier to break than others. Um, and it says on page 109, for every agreement that you break, it makes you suffer. You will need to replace it with a new agreement that makes you happy. Um, to me, that almost sounds like, theories on addiction. How they say, if you're trying, or like even just habit forming things. And maybe it is very similar because a lot of this is going on mentally, right? Like you might see, it might manifest behaviorally, but it's going on mentally. Like there's a narrative that we kind of tell ourselves from the time we wake up in the morning, you know, like, you know, I could give you an example. Like, this morning I woke up and it was early, it was dark. I was like, but I feel like I should be able to wake up soon. I get up, go to the bathroom, slept through the night. It's probably the first time in like 5 days that I haven't woken up like 3 times or so. There's probably a reason for this because I did take, I had a lot of Saturday cannabis. I did, have a few indica puffs before bedtime around 9:30 p.m. or so. I had about, instead of like 2.5 milligrams of melatonin, I had maybe closer to 8 milligrams of melatonin, and probably close to about 8 milligrams of CBD. So I had melatonin, THC, and CBD in my system. And I took that, let's call it 9:35 p.m. My lights out is usually 9 p.m., but I was like, I was up and I was like, let me just push it a little bit. And I stayed up, um, kept the lights on past 9, past 9:30, past 9:40 something. Probably around like 10:15 or so, I turned off the lights and Um, I did do a quick podcast episode. Actually, no. So that means I turned off the lights closer to like maybe 10:30, 10:45 or something. Went to sleep because I was already falling asleep. I was like, I'm just gonna fall asleep because everything started kicking in, and I just knocked out, went to bed, woke up in the morning, refreshed, and it's easy to wake up and tell myself like, "Oh, I didn't sleep enough. Let me go back to bed." That's an easy thing that I think a lot of people can tell themselves. Now, I know for myself personally, it is very hard for me to go back to sleep once I'm up, especially once it's like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. If I'm up, it's very unlikely that I'm going to go back to bed unless I'm really that tired. Um, but if I have something on my mind, things that I kind of want to do for the day, then I'll usually be able to be up by like 5:30, 6:15 or so. And I was kind of thinking about like how do I want to plan out my day? What do I want to do? And I decided on some things I actually want to do. That actually made it so, by 6:20, I'm already pouring a little bit of yerba mate into a cup in the kitchen and starting to drink it to get my energy up so I can start podcasting. And, I'm like, I don't mind waking up and podcasting. That's something I like to do. But, I was laying there for a good, I don't know, from like 5, a little after 5 a.m. to like 6 something in the morning. So about an hour I was laying there, just kind of like watch some videos on YouTube of some guy, collecting some things in the ocean, like with a metal detector and seeing what he kind of pulled out and, just kind of like relaxing videos that are like, I don't really care if I fall asleep in the middle of this. I'm not like missing anything. I can always go back. Just something to kind of like keep my attention on that and not just like my mind just like spinning around. Um, and once I decided that I wanted to wake up and I kind of had a plan for the day of kind of what I'm gonna do, work on some more music later on, and you know, work on some stuff, some creative stuff today. That kind of was like easy to wake up. I was like, I don't care if the sun's not even out yet. Like it was dark, the sun still hasn't come up yet as I'm even speaking, and like had to turn on my light and like started hydrating and everything, and I'm ready to like start the day. But as I was laying there, I kind of noticed when I was thinking about, okay, maybe I'll go do deliveries, and I was like, I don't want to get up early to like do deliveries. Like the second I started thinking about doing deliveries, I was like, well, maybe I need to go back to sleep and sleep in and not wake up so early because I might be too tired if I wake up. And I started thinking about maybe I need to work out, because maybe I'm ready to work out. I've had COVID for like almost 2 weeks now. I'm almost hitting my 2 week mark. Um, Tuesday is going to be my 2 week mark of from when I tested positive. Um, and I think yesterday was my 1 week mark from when I tested negative. And so I'm just kind of passing this period by, and I'm like, well, maybe I might be possibly strong enough to start working out. So I thought about it and I was like, but if I have C4, I might get some anxiety later. So I don't want to push it with the caffeine, and then to try to think about working out without a pre-workout in my system. Like I was like, my energy does not feel like it can do that this morning. So I'm still laying there. But just laying there and just thinking about, okay, what are my options for this day? Today's Sunday. What are my options for things to do today? There were certain things that made me want to feel like I want to lay there more. I don't really have the motivation to really actually want to do certain stuff. Like, I'm not saying I'm not going to do it just because I'm not motivated, but I kind of noticed, and it is a bit of a narrative, but it was kind of like a physical sensation too. It's like when I was thinking about certain things that I wanted to do, it made me a little more tired rather than like getting that little energetic little burst. in my mind of like, oh, ideas, and like I feel like happy about this, and like this is kind of it's kind of giving me a little dopamine to kind of think about, how this experience is going to be, you know, versus other things that did the opposite. Like it didn't give me dopamine. It felt like it took away dopamine. I don't even know if that's possible, but it just didn't give me that little burst of like excitement of like, okay, can I start now? Like, can I start now? Like, is it like a proper time for me to like start doing this? um, Podcasting, I don't really mind waking up and doing it. I actually enjoy it, even if it's 5 in the morning. If I can be like alert, I'll do it. You know, I don't really mind 5, 6 in the morning. I'm usually motivated to do it early because you know, once I have family members and other people waking up, they're gonna be able to kind of overhear. So, to me, it kind of helps to start around 6 o'clock. Um, Gives me kind of like a 2 to 3 hour buffer. So I was kind of like pretty okay with that idea. I was like podcasting, reading, doing some stuff like that. You know, I felt like okay, like it would be cool to wake up, and like work on that. Um, but other stuff when it came to like deliveries, exercising, I do want to do, but when I thought about like going to the gym, I was like, that's just like an extra step. To have to like get up and like get a little more dressed so that I can like drive to the gym and like have to be a little more alert, a little more like ready to like people talk to you or something, have to be like a little bit in a friendly kind of mood. And I was like, I'm not saying I'm not in a good mood. I'm in a great mood, but that might just be the yerba mate talking. But I do feel like I slept pretty well, um, especially compared to all the other nights. I definitely slept way better. Um, and yeah, I just felt like it was um, kind of like a peek at an example, like because I was laying there and I kind of noticed like certain thinking about certain plans for the day kind of makes my energy dip a little bit. This is before I'm even awake, like fully like up, like I'm awake. I'm thinking about it, but I'm not like out of bed and like lights on, glasses on, like dressed, ready to start doing anything. Like I'm literally just like laying there, just like thinking. And so I'm like, okay, you know, there's something there. There's something to that because I do remember that experience with work. I remember, thinking like, how come I can wake up so early in the morning, and then it's always like 30 minutes before work. I feel so tired. Like if I was supposed to log on to work at 8 a.m. and it'll be like 7:30, like I'll be up at like 5:30 in the morning, feeling good, and then 7:30, 7:45 rolls around, and like my energy is just not there anymore, and I was like, that's weird, right? That's weird. I always kind of blamed it being like, oh, like it's because I haven't eaten breakfast yet or whatever, but it's like, no, it's because I don't really want to do this, you know. um there's certain things that if you really don't want to do them, or if they're gonna cause you more stress, or if it's just something you're not motivated towards, or something you're kind of just like over, but you have to go through the motions to do it just because you have to. That's kind of how I feel about food delivery. It's like it's it's a little bit mind numbing. I don't know how much money I'm gonna make in a day. Sometimes I'm like forced to take orders that I don't really want to take because I'm like, well, I haven't gotten one in a while, so I might as well take this one. And then like the pay sucks, and it's like it might be $3 to $6, and it's like they're sending me to drive. There's this area near me that I hate driving because it's uphill. You always have to drive uphill to get to these houses, and like my phone doesn't work good up there, and it's like the GPS is weird, and then you can't call the customers because I don't get good reception. and it always wants to send me up there because it's actually really close to my house. But I hate it, because it's like the least convenient place to drive, you know, and it just sucks. Like, you can't drive fast. There's like one lane, and it's easy to like miss the streets and stuff, and it's like really hilly and like weird. Like, it's just a strange area, so I just don't like it. And just thinking of how many orders I'm gonna get sent up there, and then it's a little stressful, because then you have to drive downhill every single time, and then it might send you back up there again. But it's just, you can't just like cruise, like when you're driving downhill, you kind of have to like really focus because it's like a pretty steep hill, and it's a really huge hill. So you kind of have to deal with that. And that just demotivates me even more, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to get those deliveries. And sometimes it tells, like, sometimes if the problem is like, usually I'm driving when an order comes in. And so it's hard to like look at the phone while I'm like actively driving and be like, because it gives you a few seconds to check, and I don't want to just pull over every single time. It's not always possible to just pull over. And so I'm trying to check the order and look at what it says and like see, like, is it gonna go to that neighborhood? But I can't always easily check because I'm trying to drive. So sometimes I just see the amount of money and I'm like, ah, it says 15 bucks. I'll click it, and then I'm like, dang it, that means I gotta go back up there again. Because you can check the map as you're like it kind of tells you generally what area you're going to and what area you're picking up from. But while you're driving, you're trying to like look at this, so I can't always see it. And so that's just a small example of like, you know, agreements that can be broken. You know, it's not like a deep one, but it's like little things where it's like, okay, well, if I want to make quick cash, that's the easiest way to make money on a weekend without having to like do much. All I got to do is turn on this app and, drive either to the hot spots, or just drive around certain areas where I almost always get orders. And that part's not hard. It's not hard. It's just not interesting. Like, maybe at most I'll learn about a cool restaurant or like see like a cool house, you know, or see like a place that has like a good menu and the prices might be nice. Um, that's like at most. That's what I get out of it the most. To me, that's not a lot. I'm also wasting gas while I'm driving around, having to be like alert, find the restaurant, find the house, get there kind of like on time. I don't mind the ones where they have you drop it at the door, but sometimes it's like, workers at the mall ordering food. And think about it, it's almost Christmas and all the freaking Christmas shoppers are out, and it's Sunday, and it's like, do I really want to like deal with like mall parking just to like just to deliver somebody's food where I'm gonna get like a $3 tip? It's like, come on, man. Like, it all adds up, but it's like all the inconveniences of it, like, it's not mentally stimulating at all. It doesn't give me much motivation. It's basically just do the little delivery to get the little money, and then the money adds up. And that's kind of all it really is. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything that groundbreaking or interesting. And, I do prefer work that is interesting. I like to use my brain, but I also don't like work that's like right now, I try not to get into work opportunities that are like too mentally or emotionally taxing, because that was the whole issue of my other job, was that it was too much. So I pushed myself too much because I had to, but it was too much for me. Like, and I felt so obligated towards it because, we were helping all these people in need. But I was like, it got to a point where I was like, well, now I'm a person in need, shoot, just from having to do this job. So I had to get out of that. But, um, They talk about how if the process looks hopeless, you have to be patient with yourself, take the process slowly. Um, it's not like a 1 day situation where you're gonna be like, um, getting everything uh, working fine until then. I don't know what's going on with my Wi-Fi showing off. I don't know. Um, but yeah, so that's pretty much what it says. And then, um, something interesting on page 110, it says, we cannot change an agreement with less power than we used to make the agreement. And almost all of our personal power is invested in keeping the agreements we have with ourselves. That is so true, you know, like we really do, at least I do, really, um, like even from the time I wake up, I'm already deciding, what I have energy for, what I'm deciding that I want to actually do. Um, and it says that all of these old agreements which rule our dream of life are the result of repeating them over and over again. Therefore, to adopt the four agreements, you need to put repetition in action. Practicing the new agreements in your life is how your best becomes better. Repetition makes the master. So, the next part we'll be looking at is starting on page 111, the discipline of the warrior, controlling your own behavior. Um, but I like, this little section, it's pretty true, and that there was something that I did notice, not that long ago, um, was that, um, there aren't usually that many things that we have that kind of make us feel maybe down, um, or kind of like take energy away, or kind of like those types of agreements or thought processes that can be adjusted. It's not that we have a lot of them, it's just that we repeat them. We repeat them so often. Like if you write things down, you start noticing that there's patterns in things. And so that's one thing I noticed because there was one point where I was like, man, like how am I gonna work through all these problems? Like I have so many problems. Like I do. Like I'm not saying I don't have like multiple issues, but it seemed like there was like a list of like 500 things. I'm like, how am I gonna like work on all this? And then I realized, it's maybe like five categories. It's really not that much, you know. Um, the way I noticed it was kind of, um, like I've talked about it before, how like I used to wake up, and it's happened recently a little bit, but not so often. Honestly, not so often. Where I've woken up, it's usually like around 3 a.m. or so. Just wake up with these like memories of like just negative memories of stuff, just like replaying in my head, like I mentioned, like musical experiences of like messing up at a church service. Like it's kind of a weird thing that I would like still be thinking about this like 10, 15 years after the fact. Like, why am I still thinking about this stupid thing? Like, I don't talk to any of these people anymore. I don't play music at that church anymore. It was a one time thing. Um, it was a short experience. It was one song. Um, but I kind of was able to kind of realize what was going on in my life about it. Um, and maybe my like I had my role in it, but other people had their roles in it too. My intentions were good, but just maybe it just didn't go perfectly, you know. And I was kind of coordinating things, so to some extent I was kind of at fault, but I was kind of happy that I had invited a bunch of people to sing at church that originally were kind of like, left to the side. Like originally like there were like three or four people that I hadn't seen for a while at church. Nobody had invited them around or anything. And, I had everyone's numbers. I was cool with most people. And so I was like, why don't I just invite these guys, to sing? Because if I'm in charge of this group, I'd rather invite people that I want to sing, like people that, are still part of this church. Nobody else is calling them. So let me just call them. So, like, the intentions were good, but instead of practicing, we were kind of like catching up, and like we didn't really start on time with the practice. And then by the time we were available to practice, we only had time to go through the songs maybe once, maybe twice, which wasn't enough. And we were kind of under the wire. So I kind of made the decision, you know uh how about just the people who are able to practice, they'll be the ones who sing. And so I was kind of, backup guitar for this one guy who was singing and playing all the songs. And he kind of messed up on the last verse of one of the songs. He was kind of playing how there's the verse and the chorus, and he was playing like the verse instead of the chorus, and I'm like trying to follow him. And when I realized he was playing the wrong part, I just kind of, I was like, either I play the right part or I follow him. And so I just started following him because I was like, we can't both be playing two separate things. And so I just decided to like follow what he was playing. And it was the end of the song, like I guess maybe the last chorus of the song or something. And I was like, well, what? It's the end of the song. Like, you can't really redeem from there. But we ended it, and then I was just like, okay, walk, go back to your seat. Like, it's closing song. Like, go back to your seat. Like, church is over. You know. And he was kind of like, I don't want to do that again because he was the only one singing. And I was like, okay, like I kind of get that. I had a role in that. I could have helped us practice earlier instead of catching up for like an hour or so. I could have just called that and just been like, let's just start practicing. I could have made it so the other singers stayed and sang, and maybe he would have had backup. Um, and then yeah, his uncle was kind of like, yeah, you guys need to practice. You need to practice more, kind of thing. And I mean, I knew we messed up, but it was kind of like we all kind of messed up. Like, I can't take full fault for it because like I remember the drummer was late, and I kind of like maybe misunderstood because he was like, can you set up the drums? I'm gonna be late. And so we set up the drums, and he was saying he was gonna be late. So in my head, I was like, let's just wait for him so we can practice. But he was like pretty late, and then when he walked in, he was like, "You guys haven't even started yet?" And I was like, "Oh, like yeah, you're right. Maybe we should have started." But by that point, it's like, what can you do? It's already too late. Time has already passed. I wasn't paying attention. You know, but I think about that a lot, but I don't know why. Like, it's kind of like that's not the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. Nobody was harmed in the process. Like, um, it was casual church like day. We used to play music like once every single month. So it really wasn't a big deal. But for some reason, I'll still be kicking myself about something as stupid as that, you know. Um but also I think I do have like quite a bit of um negative opinions about growing up in that environment. So probably a lot of it's attached to that. It's not so much just that one part of one song once. It's kind of more like that church was just not as supportive as I felt like they probably could have been. Not about that specific situation, but just in general. It's like, they kind of had me like running this group and doing a bunch of stuff. And, I was busy. It's like, dude, I'm a grad student. Like, I don't have energy for this stuff, and, like, I also wasn't like mature enough or knowing enough about myself to really notice that, like, hey, I'm spreading myself way too thin here. But I just did it because I was like, well, what else am I supposed to do? Um, it's always good to have a role. Um, they know I'm not a professional musician. Like, they had so many professional musicians in that church, and they know that I'm not one. Uh, of all things, I was reliable. That was the one thing that I would say I had over most people, is that I would show up and do what I had volunteered to do. But other than that, you know, I wasn't like super skilled at the stuff that they had me kind of like involved in. But I don't know. Um I felt like I wasn't um like I don't know. Like I don't really know exactly why I think about that when I wake up at weird hours. And there's like a few situations that are kind of like that, but there aren't that many, you know. It's just a few things where I'm like, okay. But there's a lot attached to it. It's not just like an isolated thing. It's like there's a whole time period of things that were going on at that time, and like just a bunch of people I was like engaging with that just had major anger issues, and people were just like grouchy and like grumpy. And when I think of it, I'm like, man, I knew a lot of people at that church with some like major anger issues. um People my age, people older, just all kinds of stuff that was just like kind of out of whack. And like it's kind of weird to think about. But also at that time period, this was not 2023. This was like early 2000s. And like people weren't so much talking about mental health. People weren't talking about all that kind of stuff. So it's like it wasn't really a big part of the conversation that people were having, of like, oh, being overwhelmed, oh, being burnt out, like, you know, um, that whole concept of quiet quitting and all that kind of stuff. Like nobody was talking about that stuff back then. Um, and so, things have evolved since then. Um, and I'd say I've definitely learned a lot about myself. Like it's really not a big deal. Like I don't think anybody even remembers it. I'm probably the only person who remembers that. I'm pretty sure. Maybe the guy who was singing remembers it. Maybe the drummer remembers it. I don't know. But I don't think anybody remembers it. I really don't. Um, but I don't know. They were just kind of, I've had a lot of experiences in life. Um, they were kind of, I guess, social experiences. Um, kind of involving other people. A lot of it was through church because I was very much raised in church. So a lot of my socializing, social life, social upbringing, um, was through church. And I'd say like I've had a lot, probably way more good experiences than bad ones, but I do kind of have a lot of memories of kind of like the bad ones. And it's probably just my mind trying to like warn me. It's like, stay away from there. It wasn't really the healthiest of options of places to stick around. um and you know like I don't really think it's like when it comes to agreements that people are trying to break and stuff, and it's like there's experiences like that where it's like you remember what happened and you're like, no, like don't go do that, you know. But sometimes it's not like a big deal. Like say if you were playing sports, um like I grew up playing sports too, and I kind of did always have like a bit of like a performance anxiety thing, like a public speaking kind of, not public speaking, well, kind of public speaking, but like I did it so much that it was kind of one of those things that was like, whatever, I'm gonna do it anyways. But there were a lot of things like that where it was like, when I think about it, I did find myself on stage a lot, you know, for somebody who doesn't like being on stage, for someone who doesn't like being like in the eye of like a crowd like watching you. I've been in those experiences so much. It was like I played sports weekly. I was probably on stage at church almost weekly, and we always had group discussions and stuff, and I was participating in those at least weekly, so it was probably at least almost 3 times a week outside of school that I was kind of like either giving my opinions in a group of people or on a stage doing like either like a prayer or talking about the offering, or you know talking to my peers like in like a Sabbath school group or something like that, and like having to give some kind of like you know have some kind of role. I don't know if you want to call them leadership roles, but some kind of role where I had volunteered to like take a part in something. And with sports, it's like, you have the ball, you have your team's depending on you. Like there's always like an audience of a crowd like watching you. I hate those experiences. I hate them so much. And it's like, I was doing it from probably, I think from about when I left primary Sabbath school and joined the junior group, because my dad was one of the Sabbath school teachers for primary. So once I graduated out of there, um, I was kind of more independent in that group and started. I was like, oh, like I really liked it because I was like, we're actually gonna like learn, and like, because the group I was a part of, we had Sabbath school lessons, but like nobody studied, you know, nobody really talked about anything, that I found engaging. Like it really wasn't that interesting at all. And then, so I was glad to move up to this other group. I knew there were some people in there that were like in older high school grades, maybe a couple college students. And I was like, wow, they're like really smart. And so I was kind of more motivated to study the lessons and contribute to the discussions. And, I had a good time with it. I remember having a really good time with it, really liking the Sabbath school class and like learning a lot and stuff, and liking the discussions and challenging kind of like, oh, what do I really think about this, you know, and that's kind of when I started getting more involved with stuff, was probably around high school, but all the way till um pretty much till I moved to San Diego. So that was pretty much all the way through my first grad school experience, and so I was pretty involved uh, almost every week and just jumping in volunteering and stuff. And so, you know, like when I think of having that kind of a lifestyle, just growing up, just volunteering a lot of my time and energy, and not really spending a lot of free time, just like, not that I didn't have free time, but I pretty much had things I was doing every day, Monday through Friday school, Saturday was church stuff, Sunday was sports stuff. And, you know, it was a good routine. Like when I look back, I'm like, it was a good routine. It was a little bit much, but you know, I think I would have had more issues if I didn't have that lifestyle, because it kept me active, it kept me social, it kept me, you know, kind of like engaged and like feeling like I had like a purpose and like a role in things. Um, that, you know, I don't know if I like people relying on me, but I kind of liked being a part of something where it's like you could tell that you were like a part of something, that was like helping somehow, like for me my role was kind of like I'm not a very exclusive clicky kind of person. Like I have my crew of people that I hang with, maybe a few crews of people, and I've always had that. But then I never really made a habit of having beef with a lot of people. So I could kind of pop between different groups and like nobody would be like, I get out of here. Like I would always kind of be like okay with most people. Um, at least in my opinion, that's how it seemed. Um, I always really liked, having people around me that, I felt like I wasn't like ultra disrespected by people. Um, but, you know, like I was usually respectful to like most people. I'm not saying I never made mistakes, but, you know, that's kind of how I see it. Like, um, and so I think, to have someone like that who is being given like volunteer roles to kind of like plan stuff. I think I was good for those roles because I knew everybody and I kind of kept in contact with everybody. Um, but I wasn't, um, I still had my friends. Like I didn't like hang out with just like if I didn't really like people, I wouldn't really hang around them. But I honestly didn't really start getting around people that I didn't like that much until there was this one pastor that came from like the UK or something, and once he started getting involved, it just wasn't the same. Like, um, he kind of started doing all kinds of weird stuff, and like we kind of went along with it, but he wasn't very like he seemed more interested in like flirting with girls and stuff that were young, and that just wasn't a good time. Like too young for him. They weren't like minors, but like they were maybe like 19, 20, and he was probably like 40. So, and his explanation was, in England, people who are in their 20s are more mature. And he was saying how he probably wouldn't date any females that were older than like 22. And this is like a 40-year-old man, and I'm like, ill. I mean, I'm not like ageist, but I mean, like just for someone to say that they would only date people that were like 20 years younger than them, in my head, that's kind of like a weird thing. Um, like in the U.S., that just is weird to me. It's like they're barely out of high school, and you're 40, like I don't know. Like I can understand someone having like an attraction to someone, but to just put like a hard fast like nobody over 22, that's kind of weird to me. Um, that was kind of strange to me. Um, and this dude had like a brother, like it was a couple brothers, but he had a brother who kind of saw things similarly. And I don't know what happened to this pastor. He just one day up and left. And, um, I'm not trying to be like a rumor mill or anything, but I kind of have a feeling something caught up with him because I don't know. There was something about him that I was like, I get a sense for people, and he was kind of not the best fit. I'll put it that way. Um, but I was warned about him. There was somebody who knew him from before that was like, she really didn't like him. And I was like, wow, she really doesn't like this guy. And it's odd when you don't like a pastor, especially when it's like younger pastors. Like usually when you're like in college and you have a pastor that's like 40, you're gonna be like, oh, like cool. Like there's like a pastor that's like a little younger. Like usually that's like a cool thing. So to not like them was kind of like weird. I felt like weird about it. I was like, well, we should like this guy. Like usually all the pastors that are young that come through like are pretty likable. but he just wasn't like, I don't know what his issue was. You know, he didn't really seem interested in church things, which is fine, but it's like, he was rude and I guess gossipy and negative and sarcastic and just personality wise, I think most of us were like, it just kind of rubbed people the wrong way. Like I think if he was just some casual dude that just like came through every now and then, it would be fine. But it's kind of just like as a pastor, I think that's what the issue was just as a pastor, it just wasn't a good fit. Um, if he was just like some casual volunteer that came to church every now and then, I mean, I don't think it would have been a big deal. But because he was in the pastor role, I think people kind of needed more from him. Like, I don't think we really had a lot of spiritual guidance, and he was really kind of clicky and just really not a good fit. But I was definitely raised around a lot of that kind of weird stuff, just like these weird dynamics where you're just like forced into groups with people. It's almost like in college when you do like group projects or whatever, and you're like, why are we meeting like on a Saturday morning? Because every everybody's working, and then there's always one person who can never make it, or one person who never pulls their weight, and one person who never shows up, and one person who's like overbearing and like trying to like get everybody together when they can't get together, and or somebody who lives super far and they're like, let's meet over in like the valley or whatever, and it's like, bro, like nobody wants to drive to the freaking valley. Like, you know, that's kind of how those church things feel, but it's like years of like dealing with that. It's like the same people it's like group projects every week basically. You're just trying to like compromise all the time with things, and yeah, I grew up with a lot of that, with trying to like compromise with things that I would see that I was like, this isn't right, this isn't like the best thing. But it's like you kind of, they're part of the group, so you kind of gotta, all right, like you volunteered to be part of the group that does this on this day of the week, so now you're stuck with these people until you decide to not do it anymore. It's like, oh, you do the Friday Vespers every Friday at this place in Gardena, so now you guys have to get together and practice all the time, on this certain day, and like, I don't know. But I think all that does kind of tie into like agreements with stuff, because we all get these like when you think about your upbringing, when you think about your how things are now compared to like when you were younger, um you kind of develop along the way like certain ways of dealing with things, certain patterns of dealing with things. um like I definitely noticed myself in the past like two to maybe 2.5 years. I've been super picky with people I want to engage with. Like there are certain people that I'm just like, I am not dealing with their nonsense anymore. Um, I'll probably post about, you know, social balance, friendship balance, it's kind of one of those things that I've kind of learned more about. Like sometimes there's just not a lot of balance there. Um, um, it's hard to recognize, but I don't know. These are my thoughts on this type of thing for right now. Um, yeah, I mean, breaking agreements is, you know, it's not an easy thing. It takes a lot of reflection, but sometimes the things do just like resurface, you know, like I was explaining about that church, band thing. It's like sometimes things just resurface over and over and over again, and it's like, what the heck is this? You know? Um, but yeah, it's interesting to think about. At the least, it's interesting, right? I think that there's something to things that kind of resurface like that. Like maybe it's like, look at them, look at them, look at them. Like how to look at them, I don't really know. But like I'm not like an expert at that. But like it's easy to look at other people's patterns, but I think it's hard to look at our own because nobody wants to like dive deeper into their own mess. It's like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, ew. But I don't know, it's easy to like have an aversion towards it or even just like naturally not even being able to like sit and focus on it. That's why I think things like art, music, writing, even podcasting, things like that, it's so powerful because there's a way of like getting it out of your system versus like trying to internally just like have the gears turning. For some people, I feel like, maybe for a lot of people, but I feel like sometimes when you're just in your head, there's like parts that just don't click, you know? Like you have to start a process of getting it out of your head for things to kind of like unravel a little bit better. Um but I mean, I don't know. Things go from like a simple mess up at a church song to, deeper stuff, where people have like deeper traumas and things like that. And, I would say like maybe those aren't the ones to be diving into all by yourself, like right away. Like, solve the little ones, have the little wins. Think about a little thing, even energy dips. Think about those, lifestyle balance. That's an easy one to kind of identify stuff. If you look at those balance wheels and like lifestyle balance and like finances, spirituality, physical fitness, mental fitness, emotional health, um, just diving into these little areas, um, that I think is usually going to be pretty helpful. Um, because usually it's easy to see what's going on right in front of you just by how you feel. You know, if I'm irritated, there's probably some underlying reason. Maybe it's on the surface, maybe it's like deeper. Maybe I just didn't sleep good. Maybe I'm hungry. Maybe the caffeine is making me crash a little bit. It's usually simple things like that. It's not usually like I'm around somebody that I have some deep wounds with. I mean, that does happen, but that's so rare of an occasion that I have to deal with those things because I've kind of set up my life so I don't really have to deal with those types of people anymore. But there was a time where it was like, okay, now I got to deal with these idiots like almost every day, people that were just not healthy to be around. Um, and like, yeah, I mean, those kind of things just come up. So I would say that's the easiest place to start. It's just like where are your energy dips? Where are you less motivated? Um, there's usually a reason behind that. Why am I less motivated to do this certain thing? Like I was describing, like I'm not motivated to do deliveries, even though it's the easiest money I can come across in a day. I don't have to put in job applications. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to interview. I just turn on the app and just pick up stuff and take it somewhere else. Like that's all I have to do. I don't have to do anything else, you know. Um, it's the easiest job you can possibly get, and it's not even something that I can like bring myself to do, unless I like need the money, then I'm like, oh, like, if I'm a little behind on my budget or like trying to like save more or build up money in certain areas, then it's like, all right, I'll go do deliveries because I'm under the wire. But it's like, unless I'm like under the wire or financially like trying to like really reach some goals, like I will not do it. It doesn't motivate me enough. It's hard for me to, I can't motivate myself enough to go do it because it's so mind numbing and boring and dull. Um, and I dislike it so much. But it's not hard, you know. I don't think I've once been like yelled at or anything. Like I've dropped food, I've ripped bags. Um, I've not been able to find certain things when I was doing like the store shops. I've canceled orders because they were going to cost me like 60 something out of pocket. Um, there's all kinds of stuff that I've done that, I didn't have any boss breathing down my neck or anybody like mad at me or whatever. So far, knock wood, I've only had positive experiences with, not positive experiences, but maybe like not negative experiences. Like I've never had anybody be like, "Oh, you're so slow," or like, "You're supposed to be here 5 minutes ago," or "I'm not gonna tip you," or like whatever. Like everyone's been pretty respectful. Um, so I don't know, but yeah, it's been like an hour, so let me just cut this recording because I've been talking a while. But um, hope that's interesting. Hope that's helpful. We'll try to get back at it a little bit, guys, and finish up this book. Uh, I didn't forget about it. I just didn't really want to, in all honesty. So, all right.